Back to when head-to-toe denim and a black t-shirt could automatically make you cool. Okay, everybody, today we're going all the way back to 1971 to look at a classic, albeit an imperfect one, that had everybody in the theaters way back in the day. We're talking about Billy Jack. Now, before we go any further, and before we dive into this gem anymore, once and again, and as always, to the trailer.
I'm going to take this right foot, and I'm going to whop you on that side of your face. And you want to know something? There's not a damn thing you're going to be able to do about it. Really? Really?
It's funny, isn't it? How everybody in town's afraid of you. But I guess it's a good thing they are. 'Cause if they weren't, they'd hurt the school a lot more than they do now.
What's going to happen tomorrow is going to happen, and all your worry in the world isn't going to change that.
Believe me, I know. Look to the mountains so green.
My religion, my nonviolence, the kids, it's all I have left now.
Now, I think of the number of years she's going to have to carry in her memory the savagery of this idiotic moment of yours. I just go bizarre. The redwoods being stopped, right?
Right.
Keeps you on your toes, eh?
Don't you think you better pull up to the intersection?
Just testing you.
You worked with King, didn't you?
Yes,
Where is he?
Dad.
And where's Bob and Jack Kennedy?
Dad.
Not dead, their brains blown out.
I don't care about all that. I just don't want you to go out and commit murder.
Mr. Johnson, when's the last time you cut your hair?
When's the last time you brushed your teeth, sir?
They'll kill you, Billy.
An Indian isn't afraid to die. Don't ever expect a white man to understand that.
Hey, Billy. You're not armed. No tricks.
And I know that you're only doing it because of the love you have for the kids. And me.
Go ahead and hate your neighbor. Go ahead and cheat a friend. What the age of it's blowing. Come the judgment day of the bloody morning at noon. One soldier rides away.
Alright, this motion picture was directed by Tom Laughlin himself. Credited to T.C. Frank in the credits, but that's just an amalgamation of his kids' names. You know, T.C., the initials of the first two kids, and Frank, the name of his other child. So, T.C. Frank and nod to his kids. It's really him. It's the way it goes. Of course, he directed this, and he also directed, well, all things Billy Jack related. Of course, he did The Born Losers. He directed The Trial of Billy Jack, and Billy Jack Goes to Washington, In the Proper Time, and The Return of Billy Jack, and The Master Gunfighter, and Like Father, Like Son. It is what it is. I mean, he didn't have a huge directing career. It is what it is. It's Billy Jack related, basically. Billy Jack. Okay, playing Billy Jack. We just covered this. Tom Laughlin. Let's go. Obviously, he was in The Born Losers. He was in The Trial of Billy Jack. He was in, well, all things Billy Jack related. I'm just going to skip all that because I'm just going to be naming the same things over and over and over again. But he was also popped up in little things like South Pacific and Gidget and Senior Prom. And he was on TV, a lot of TV. Deputy, Wagon Train, Man with the Camera, Playhouse 90, Climax, The Silent Service. Never like a big star or anything in any of those things, but, you know, he was in them. Playing Jean, Delores Taylor. Now, okay, let's be honest. Her whole career was the Billy Jack franchise, so I'm not going to even run down the names. I've already said them too many times. It's kind of getting boring. She was in all the Billy Jack flicks. She was credited to be as a writer and producer on most of them. It is what it is. Oh, yeah. She was his real wife. They were together forever. I mean, forever, until he passed away in 13 and she passed away in 18. I think they were married like 50, 60 years, something like that. It's Mrs. Billy Jack. Okay, playing Sheriff Cole. Clark Howard. Huge amount of credits to his name. Let's get rolling. We're talking about he was in stuff like Airport and The Giant Claw and Eat My Dust, but really a TV guy. TJ Hooker, Adam 12, Dragnet, Perry Mason, Leave It to Beaver, Sea Hunt, 77 Sunset Strip, Harbor Command, The Adventures of Dr. Fu Manchu. And it just goes on and on and on and on. One of those guys that popped up in well over 100 things. Just the way it goes. He was around. Playing Posner. Brett Freed. Not a name. Not at all. Huge career on TV. Somewhat of a career in movies. Let's go. We're talking about he was in things like Hang 'em High, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, Twilight of Honor, and tons of TV. Again, Ben Casey, Perry Mason, Shane, Bonanza, The Big Valley, The Virginian, Mission Impossible, Cannon, Vegas with Dan Tanner himself. So again, credits to his name are just ridiculous. A lot of TV work, but it doesn't make a difference. It is what it is. Let's keep going. Playing Deputy Mike. Yes, now we're talking. Kenneth Tobey. Oh yeah. You know I'm a Kenneth Tobey fan, man. Guy was in some awesome shit. Let's rock. Of course he was in The Thing from Another World. Of course he was in stuff like Airplane and Strange Invaders and Big Top Pee-wee and Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry and Walkin' Tall and Ben. And literally, I'm not going to mention him, but he popped up on probably every TV show ever created by man. I'm not even joking. The list of credits is long. The list of credits is huge. The list of credits is basically fucking ridiculous. The guy had a massive career, and I always love to see him pop up and stuff. And there's some other faces you might recognize, you might see, you're going to remember. It is what it is. We're talking about people like Howard Hesseman. Come on, you know I'll know him. Dr. Johnny Fever from WKRP in Cincinnati. And Richard Stahl. Dudes, come on, Overboard, 9 to 5. Beware the Blob, and tons of TV. And David Roya, you know, Law and Order, Cannon, Chips. And Victor Izay. I mean, we're talking about Marcus Welby, Gunsmoke, and a stunning amount of B movies. So, there's some names and some faces. Some of the faces that you're going to recognize the most might not be the lead characters, but they're out there. So, cast is what it is. Okay, everybody, we're going to do this in 90 seconds or less, so we can keep it short, keep it fast, keep it entertaining, keep it moving, so we get to where we'd much rather be, the summation. Movie starts out, you got these couple of police officers talking to each other. Well, Deputy Mike, apparently, his daughter ran off and joined some commune or some kind of stuff like that, and she's coming back into town. But Deputy Mike has to go with this guy Posner so they can go blast some stallions or whatever kind of horses they are and basically sell the meat to a dog food packing plant. I don't know, call it what you want, doesn't make a difference. Anyway, they go off to do such a thing, and this is where you get to meet the head baddie, Posner, and he's a very rich and powerful man. You really don't understand why, but he's a very rich and powerful man, and he has a son, and he wants his son to shoot these horses too, but the son won't do it. He's like, no, I can't do it, Dad, I can't. And then, as they're about to start blasting these ponies in the next week, who shows up but one? Billy Jack. Oh yeah. See, these guys, they went onto an Indian reservation, and they were going to kill Indian horses on an Indian reservation, and Billy Jack is like, no, not here, son. No. Anyway, the movie continues. The movie moves on. You see Deputy Mike, he goes home, sees his daughter. Well, it turns out she's pregnant. She doesn't know who the dad is because she slept with so many guys. Long story, we'll get there later. Doesn't make a difference. Anyway, he punches her in the eye. Next thing you know, she's in a hospital. And, well, these people, good friends of Billy Jack, they have this school. It's kind of like a new age, whatever type of school. And there, they say, we will hide this girl so that her father can't find her and beat her again. She can have her baby. And it's like a new age, whatever kind of school where math and arithmetic and all that kind of stuff ain't really a big thing. It's like acting and drama and painting and making baskets and whatever. Everybody welcome. Is what it is. So sooner or later they start looking for that girl and they start harassing all the people at the school. Before you know it, Billy Jack has a run-in in town. Well, a couple of the kids from the school go into town. Posner's kid, some other rich kids, they start picking on these guys. Not really cool. Billy Jack shows up, smacks the living hell out of him, beats the hell out of Posner, gets cracked over the head, gets released. Is what it is. Now you have these town meetings about not wanting the Native Americans in town. Everybody's screaming at each other. The school kids are screaming at the town people. The town people are screaming at the school kids. Oh, it's a big mess. Until they all decide, hey, let's just get together and watch some theater shows up at the camp. Before you know it, everybody's kind of getting along. Everything is basically okay, except for the whole angle with Posner and his kid and Billy Jack in the school. And, well, of course, Deputy Mike, who still wants his daughter back and he can't really find her, is what it is. Well, one thing leads to another. I don't want to give it too much away. But at one point, they're kidnapping kids from the school and holding them ransom just to get to the daughter. Kind of crazy stuff. Posner's kid, it turns out to be Satan on wheels, and he does all kinds of crazy stuff, including raping Jean, assaulting some girls. It gets crazy. Well, before you know it, Billy Jack takes care of business, and there's a final standoff in a church in the middle of the desert. Will they kill Billy Jack? Will Billy Jack make it out alive? Will the people come to Billy Jack's rescue? You don't know. I'm not going to tell you. That went more than 90 seconds. I'm sorry. Who cares? Let's get going to the summation. Okay, everybody. Does Billy Jack work? Well, yeah, Billy Jack works, but it's a flawed kind of work. Let's just get into it. Before we get really into it, let's get the big three out of the way like we always do. First off, the directing. Laughlin did an okay job. I mean, there's parts of it that look legit, and then there's parts of it that look a little bit sketchy, and there's parts of it that just look kind of silly. So, it's a mixture. I know they filmed this movie over a period of time. It wasn't like they just did it all in a weekend, and it kind of shows. There's some disjointed stuff going on, and we'll get to all that later. As a whole, if you don't mind the way a motion picture looks like The Creature from Black Lake or you know, something like that, then you're fine with the way this thing looks. There's some pretty shots of the desert. There's some decent shots of people in conversations. You get the idea, though. This is a low-budget flick, and that never quite escapes you. The writing. The story's a little haphazard, but we'll get into that in a moment. As far as dialogue and conversations, they're okay. Some of the best lines come from Billy Jack. Some decent lines from other people. A lot of it looks like they were just winging it and improvising. But the writing as a whole, again, low budget, semi-action, preachy shit movie, it's going to get you where you need to go. And the acting. Well, Kenneth Tobey's really, really good. And some of the baddies are really, really good. And Tom Laughlin is actually pretty decent being Billy Jack, you know what I mean? Because I think he was just made to play that character. So it suits him well. And Delores Taylor is actually really, really good as Jean. For somebody who wasn't an actress and really didn't act in anything else. Yes, there's moments where her delivery is a little bit dry, but then there's a moment when, you know, where she does some really good touching work. So it's hit and miss. The rest of the cast, let's be honest, most of these people weren't actors. Most of these people were just family members and friends and locals and stuff like that. So the acting can be a bit wooden. And, oh, by the way, Howard Hesseman, when they refer to him as Howard in the movie, that should have me dying. It is what it is. But, so, the acting's hit and miss. It's here nor there. It's good. It's whatever. So let's get down to why this movie works in some areas, and in some areas, maybe not so much. First off, this movie came along in 1971. It was actually released in 71, re-released in 73, where it kind of took off and became like a big thing and really huge for an independent motion picture, and everybody went and seen it, and everybody's had like Billy Jack fever for a while. But it mainly worked because the Billy Jack character was kind of a cool anti-hero. And remember, the 1970s were the time of the anti-hero. Yes, you had some before them, like, you know, Brando characters and stuff like that, but really, the anti-hero came into vogue in the 1970s, whether it was Dirty Harry Callahan, whether it was Popeye Doyle, whether it was Snake Plissken, who technically was 81, but really a product of the 70s, whether it was movies like the 7-Ups and all those kind of things. It was filled with anti-heroes, and legitimately, Billy Jack was kind of an anti-hero. He's a guy who was a former Green Beret, former army, military, whatever, kind of guy. And now he's outside of that system, and he's living on an Indian reservation where he's half Indian, and he kind of is now in a different world than the world he used to be in. He's fighting the system. He's fighting a system, and he's against what a lot of that represents. So, classically, he is an anti-hero. He's the hero, but he's an anti-hero because he's a violent man, which is usually goes hand in hand with every anti-hero you've ever seen in a motion picture, and he's against the system. And I guess even if the system's bad, it still makes the characters kind of anti-heroes. It's just the way it goes. Also, the motion picture brings up a lot of issues with the plight of the Native American Indians at the time. It did. And it was great that in the 1970s, people were finally starting to look back at the, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s of Hollywood and see that they were treated and how they were represented, and it wasn't really cool and all that kind of stuff. So it was great that it was finally bringing some attention to that cause. It was a movie that really played into that and played into the counterculture a lot, which we'll get to more in a moment. But it had that going too. So you had a great anti-hero, you had this message about the Native Americans, you had that kind of thing, and it just lifted it up. And let's be honest, on top of everything else, it had a couple of iconic scenes. Billy Jack was one of the first real motion pictures to show like martial arts type stuff on the screen. Yes, Bruce Lee was around in that era, and you had some stuff pop up on TV shows and everything like that, but everybody at the end of this motion picture was talking about I'm going to take my right foot and whomp you on that side of your face with. They were talking about the ice cream store. They were talking about the fight in the park. That's just the way it goes. And if you think about Billy Jack, 99% of you are going to sit there and say, I remember when he just freaking crescent kicked that guy in the side of the head and knocked him on the ground, and that was the coolest shit ever. So, the fight, the martial arts, and just the sheer presence of Tom Laughlin, decked out in denim with a black hat and a black t-shirt to the entire flick. It was cool. You can't deny it. You know what I mean? So those are the things that work for this motion picture, and those are the things that kind of lifted up from being some B flick to being memorable. Let's get on to the obvious problems with this motion picture. Okay, first off, because they were doing things at a odd pace, some of the continuity in this motion picture is a little bit frightening. I mean, especially near the end where you see Billy Jack, he's got a bullet in him, he's held up in the church, and at one point you'll see him and he looks like he's dying because he's been bleeding out for a day and he's sweating, and then in the very next time he turns his head, he's completely looking healthy, his hair is dry, there's no sweat on him, stuff like that. There's a lot of continuity glitches in this thing, and I think you just got to roll with it for what it is, but the end of it is just alarming how bad that can be. Also, the writing tends to be a bit disjointed, and the characters are a little bit not flushed out. Let me put it this way. You take Posner's son, right, Bernard, right? In the beginning, he's kind of like an interesting character. You're like, okay, this prick of a guy has a kid that he wants to make violent and mean and vicious and all this other kind of stuff, and the kid resists it and hates his father because he wants him to kill horses and all this other kind of stuff. And then you can say to yourself, okay, I'm going to follow an arc with this guy. This guy's going to go off, and he's not going to be really a bad guy, but he's frustrated and angry with his dad and programmed to be evil, so he's going to do some messed up shit. But in the end, you're going to be like, okay, this guy's got some issues. But all of a sudden, he turns out to be like worse than the dad. He wouldn't shoot a horse, but he's shooting a person in the head 4 times, and an hour later, having sex with some underage chick or something. And you're like, what? He rapes a woman? You're like, what? How did we get from A to B? This is just, that character would have been an interesting arc, but you just made him a typical bad guy. And worse than the bad guy. Worse than his dad, for Christ's sake. So you're like, where are we going? I don't know. And there's times where even Billy Jack himself, he's supposed to be this big pacifist and all this other kind of stuff and everything like that. But he's a man of violence. And you get that. He's a guy with a temper and a violent man and all this other. But then they'll throw in these one-liners where he's like, oh, the white man has too many guns or something like that. But this guy's walking around armed to the teeth all the time with knives off his side. You're like, what do you say? Come on, dude. Yeah, come on, dude. Follow one thing, don't whatever. And finally, one of the things that really drags this movie down is there's really, really cool stuff in it. And usually all the Billy Jack scenes are pretty cool. But the scenes in the school just go on too long. I mean, yes, you get the point that they're trying to make. Yes, there's some scenes that have impact. I get it. But it comes off as extremely preachy. And not just a little bit. Almost like we're going to ram this down your throat and bang you over the head with it preachy. It just hits you continuously. It's like you could watch a scene in that school and be like, okay, I get what the school's about. You know, that 90 seconds covered it. And then it goes on for like 7-8 minutes. You're like, whoa, okay. Are we padding this movie out? Because it didn't need it. It was almost 2 hours long. You could chop this thing down a bit. We didn't need it smacked in our faces over and over so much. I get they were trying to make a point. And I get that they were trying to take a stand. But after a while, sometimes it just starts to look goofy. And also because of the anodes of time. You have now seen parts of this motion picture anyway, seen a zillion times. Let's face reality. The people from the town hate the people from this new age, whatever type of school that's going on. They just think it's ridiculous. They're a bunch of stoner hippies living in the mountains, and they're just like nuts and weaving baskets and doing plays and all that. And the kids from the school hate everybody in the town because they think they're a bunch of, friggin' ultra constricted, can't say nothing, can't do this, can't do that, living by the rules, blah, blah, type of people. And then they all get together and they yell at each other, and then they say, hey, I bet you I'm just misunderstanding you. And they say, I bet you I'm just misunderstanding you. And they hang out for one afternoon in an auditorium and do a play together. Before you know it, a huge part of the town is now all kumbaya with the school. Great! That's all fine and dandy, and it's cool, but now you've seen it so many times in motion pictures. You know what I mean. Every time there's a teacher going into a school and they don't like the teacher and she doesn't know about the kids and they hate each other, and then before you know it, at the end everybody's together, or there's a rich girl and a poor guy, whether it was Dirty Dancing or whether it was whatever it was. Whether it was based on money or race or whatever, you've seen it a zillion times done over again. Now, back then, this was kind of different, and you didn't really get to see a lot of stuff like that. But, again, now you're kind of like, we've been down this path many a times before. It's a great story, great art, but, you've seen this before. So in the end, what do you have? You have something wanted to be a greatly profitable and memorable independent flick. Everybody liked Billy Jack. Everybody thought the movie was kind of cool. And really, everybody thought the character was more cool, probably, than even the movie. You remember Billy Jack the most. You remember the fight scenes the most. You remember that cool scene when, at the end of it, she's like, if you just give up being a man of this and a man of that. And he says to her, he goes, if you just find me one place in the country where people have nothing but love and caring for each other, and there's no murder, no rape, and all that. No, one place in the world. That I'll change my ways. And she just looks at him like, what? Can't name a place. You remember those scenes. Those are cool scenes in the motion picture by an anti-hero of the 70s. The rest of it kind of fades out of your head over the years. And let's be honest, all the sequels were very forgettable, in my opinion. If this one was preachy, those were over the top. So, you have a classic that's got flaws, that's not perfect. But you had a guy that was made to play that character and deliver that character on screen and do it with such a relaxed kind of ease that it made a man of action and a man of drama almost seem like he's just, well, yeah, really. That kind of thing. It just came off really well underneath the big lights. Okay, everybody. Be good. Take care. Stay out of trouble. And no matter what the situation, never, ever take any bullshit from anybody. Billy Jack wouldn't.